we have a quorum, Mr. Gibson? Good evening. This is a hybrid meeting of the City Council. Members of the public can view this meeting live on Channel 8, the city's website, and YouTube. Live Spanish translation services are being provided for tonight's meeting by telephone. Please dial 720-386-9023 and use code 104091 *.
Se ofrecen servicios de interpretación en español para esta reunión del Consejo Municipal por teléfono. Marque el número 720-386-9023 y utilice el código 104091 *.
At this time, I would like to call the meeting to order and ask the City Clerk Gibson to call roll.
Mayor Huseman, Mayor Pro Tem Alan Thomas,
Present?
Councilmember Madera,
Present.
Councilmember Chacon, Councilmember Noble,
Present.
Councilmember Hurst,
Present.
Councilmember Kim, Councilmember Ford,
Present.
Councilmember Douglas,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem, you have a quorum.
Thank you. At this time, I need a motion to excuse the member not present. Councilmember Hurst,
So moved.
Councilmember Madera,
Second.
all those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? The motion passes 8-0. At this time, please join me in a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do any council members at this time wish to amend the agenda? I need a motion and a second to adopt the agenda. Councilmember Hurst.
So moved.
Councilmember Kim. Second. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? The motion passes 8-0. At this time, we are moving on to public comment. All public comment, except for those on public hearings, will occur now. Persons registered to speak for multiple items may speak multiple times. Public comment cannot occur before the time started on the agenda. The estimated time on the agenda for citizen communication is 6:00 p.m. The time is now 6:03 p.m. Council members may address public comments during administrative business. Tonight, we do not have any virtual speakers, and now we're going to move on to our in-person speakers, and at this time, I'm going to ask the City Clerk Gibson to assist calling the public speakers.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. The first person on tonight's in-person public comment will be Keith Rogers, who is speaking on both the general public comment and also Resolution 2023-113 for the boards and commissions appointment. So, Keith, you will have 3 minutes per item, 6 minutes in total. Thank you.
I need to find out for sure what this letter is that supposedly went around Commerce City, because I never received one. There's a rumor going around that somebody's trying to buy houses over there. And we need to find out why, how, when, why is this going on? Okay, we still have major problems. We've got go-karts flying up and down the street. We've got mini bikes flying up and down the street. When are we going to get more police officers in here to take care of these problems? We also have all these trucks running down a residential school street that nobody's taking care of. We need to find out what's going on there. That's all I'm going to say for now.
Thank you.
The next person on tonight's public comment is going to be Jackie Valdez, who has signed up for public comment, Resolution 2023-100 on the commitment to Proposition 123, Resolution 2023-063 on the South Platte Crossing Affordable Housing Development, and Resolution 2023-113 on the Boards and Commissions appointment. Jackie will have 3 minutes per item, or 12 minutes in total. I was just informed that Jackie had to leave, so we will move on to the next in-person speaker, which will be Stephen Scott Van Heusen, who signed up for public comment. Stephen, you will have 3 minutes for your item.
Good evening. I'm Scott Van Heusen, a Commerce City resident. This month marks the 25th anniversary of the murder of Matthew Shepard, a 22-year-old gay university student. Matt and I had some common friends. Matt was targeted by two men as being an easy victim. He was robbed, beaten, bludgeoned, pistol whipped, tied to a fence, and left to die. I can't overexpress the evilness of this act. I can't imagine his pain. We have no way to help Matthew Shepard. Matt was targeted because he was gay. Marginalized people have historically been easy victims for all manner of abuse, intimidation, and exclusion. I don't want to be a victim. Being gay is a very, very minor part of who I am, but it's been the largest cause for abuse, harassment, and intimidation. I'm not going to accept it any longer. I'm not hoping for a better life for gay people in Commerce City. I'm hoping for a better community for everyone in Commerce City. It's our duty to advocate for those who feel unwelcome, neglected, or underserved. It's our obligation to identify practices that suppress diversity or force assimilation. It's our responsibility to make changes to any currently used procedure or rule that infringes on individuals' rights of choice. That being said, I want to come back to the values listed for Commerce City. They make me feel good. Under integrity, we demonstrate integrity by being honest and telling the truth. Doing the right thing even when no one is looking. Being consistent in words and actions. Collaboration, we demonstrate collaboration by investing in the success of others, communicating information and insights, and working together towards common goals. Innovation, we demonstrate innovation by embracing meaningful change that drives results, by adopting best and safe practices, finding new and creative ways to act to solve problems. Respect, we demonstrate respect by honoring diversity and differences, valuing the worth of others, practicing patience and understanding. Finally, excellence. We demonstrate excellence by being accountable to the community, the organization, and ourselves, by going beyond what's expected, and by creating customer success. Thank you.
Thank you.
The last person on tonight's roster for public comment will be Joy Bishop, who has registered to speak on public comment in Resolution 2023-100 on the commitment to Proposition 123. Joy, you'll have 3 minutes per item, or 6 minutes in total. Thank you.
Good evening, Council, Mayor Pro Tem, and staff. I'm here to give you an update. As you know, I was trying to help an 80-year-old friend of mine who lives at Contra Estates. On August 28th, Tim Anderson, a friend of mine and a contractor, went over to Contra Estates so he could install the bars in the shower and a handrail next to the toilet in my friend's bathroom. I sat out in the hallway while he was working and visited with a 95-year-old lady that I knew from there. She was out for her daily walk with her walker. When Tim was done, we left the building and told two of the smoking group hi on our way out the gate. On September 12th, a Commerce City police officer was waiting in her vehicle when I arrived home about 11 a.m. She came over to my vehicle and asked if I was Joy Bishop. I said yes. And she said, "You've been trespassed." I looked at her with a dumb look on my face because I had no idea what she was talking about, and I told her so. She told me that Gina Lopez, the Comcat property manager at Contra Estates, had told her that morning that I had been over there causing trouble, and she didn't want me on the property anymore. I had been over there several times to make sure my 80-year-old friend got the help she needed, since Gina had refused to install handrails in her shower. I had only seen Gina once in the past 3 or 4 months, and she said hi to me in the hallway by her office. I am surprised that Gina barefaced lied to the officer, but she did. So now I am not allowed on the property, and I can't visit my friend Bonnie, who owns one of the cottages, or any of the other friends I made during the 4.5 years I lived there. The Commerce City officer was polite and understanding, but also told me if I went on the Contra property, I would be arrested and handcuffed. I believe the men and women on our police force have more important work to do than enforce the petty likes and dislikes of the Comcat property manager. We as a city need to require these large management companies to hire their own security staff to patrol their properties 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They claim it is private property and they don't want certain people on the property. Well, they need to pay someone to patrol it then. I would suggest that the city make security part of the new requirements for the property management business license ordinance. They are now working on and keep our police officers out on the public streets where they are needed and where they belong. That's all I have to say on the Contra property. I believe that if we're going to participate in this Proposition 123 and commit to participating in it, that we need to be way more cognizant of the needs of the handicapped and disabled in our community. We need to be building first-floor apartments that are accessible to the handicapped and disabled. We need to be building areas around the buildings that are accessible to the handicapped and disabled. If you're on the 3rd floor of one of these buildings and the electricity goes out for 2 or 3 days and you're in a wheelchair, you're stuck. You have no way to get down to the 1st floor. You have no heat, you have no lights, you have nothing. And no one's gonna climb the stairs to help you. So we need 1st floor handicapped apartments in these buildings, and we need some of these apartments to be priced low enough that the Section 8 vouchers will cover them. And that is not true on the dog track at all. And it's not going to be true in the 2 that are proposed over on Colorado Boulevard. The LIHTC properties are priced above what the Section 8 vouchers will pay. We need low income. We need housing that people can actually afford and that people can use their Section 8 vouchers for. And if these people are going to put elevators in these 3-story buildings and put people on the 3rd floor in wheelchairs, then they need to provide a backup generator for at least one of the elevators in the building. That's just common sense. It just makes sense. So we need to get specific in the questions we're asking these developers, and we need to require them to put certain things in these buildings that help the handicapped and don't make it harder for them. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mayor Pro Tem, we had 2 last-minute registrations, if you'd like me to call those as well.
Thank you, go ahead.
All right. Our next person for public comment will be Joanna Rosa, who's speaking on public comment, so you'll have 3 minutes on your item. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. Joanna Rosa Saenz. I was here the last city council meeting, and I wanted to first say thank you to everybody in this room who helped keep Tomasa in her home. We had the issue with the Wikiup Park mobile home, and with a community that came together to help Tomasa, and the attention of Univision and CBS4, and an email that I received from the president, Dr. Brown, the day of the eviction, we were able to stop it. It was such a beautiful sight. And it wouldn't have been possible for everybody in this room that took their time to make that call or send an email. So my sincerest just gratitude. Thank you for helping these families. Now that she's gonna be able to stay right now, we do have a stipulation for settlement. So they're still trying to be bullies. They're still trying to figure out a way how they can get this family out of the park. One, meaning they want her to pay almost $4,000 in their attorney fees because we got under their skin. So after further investigation, I found out that RHP Properties is not only having issues here, but throughout the whole United States, in Illinois, Chicago, Michigan. So it's much bigger than we thought, a class action. So I feel like we're still gonna keep fighting for this cause. But I do want you to know how grateful I am. And you really, when you took your service, that public oath, thank you. I've worked in many different bodies of government in Denver. I know a lot of people, and I have never in my life, in the 20 years that I have been grassroots community organizing, seen a body of government work the way that you all did. And so please give yourself a pat on the back. I mean this from the bottom of my heart, and we look forward to having a celebration and/or somewhere where we're bringing in the community with the residents there to teach them and educate them how to take care of themselves. So this doesn't keep happening. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you for your time this evening. And Tomasa is up right after me. So I'm going to let her speak. If we can just have a translator, or I can translate.
Muchas gracias.
Un momento, por favor. Francisco, can you provide translation services for Tomasa? See if our translator is available. Is Zoom unmuted?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Francisco. Are you able to provide translation services?
Yes, absolutely. My
Perfect.
pleasure.
Okay.
Proceda, señora.
Muchas gracias. Estoy muy agradecido por lo que hicieron por mí. Dios me los bendiga.
Thank you so much. I am so grateful for what you did. God bless you.
Estoy muy contenta.
I am so happy
Me quedé con mi familia.
because I was able to stay with my family.
So if I can just ask the audience to please give these people a round of applause.
Puedo pedirle al público que le den una ronda de aplausos.
Thank you.
Thank you, Francisco.
Yeah, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem, that concludes our sign up for public comment tonight.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gibson. We're going to move on to presentations. The first presentation is Oil and Gas Monthly Update. At this time, I would like to invite Dr. Russo to give the Oil and Gas Monthly Update presentation.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, I'm going to start with a little recap about the GEMS hearings. So we've been talking about GEMS for about a year and a half, and 2 weeks ago, the city participated as a party to the hearing along with 44 other cities and counties. The local government coalition, our main asks are up, they're the 7 provisions that are on the screen. Our main concerns were prioritizing DIC communities, achieving near-term reductions. We were opposed to a state fund. We were also opposed to trading for certain companies with historic violations. And we were very concerned with setting a reasonable cost cap threshold. So what that means is the cost cap threshold is when they have to install certain equipment. So at what price do they need to do that? So again, these are all the local governments that were part of the coalition. You'll see Commerce City front and center. And this is a brief summary of the ruling. So the Air Quality Control Commission, their rule fell very short of our expectations as local government. And so in the black is what we were asking for, and in the red is what the rule will require of these facilities. So again, for prioritizing co-pollutants within our community, that is related to a cost threshold. And Suncor has already said that there are no projects that would meet that criteria, so they're interested in just trading or paying into a fund. In terms of near-term reductions, rather than starting in 2024, the commission is allowing the first year to be 2026. They have to write a plan in 2025, but they don't even have to comply till 2026. The Air Quality Control Commission did approve of a state fund, and they also are allowing companies with historic violations to trade with other companies if they're within a DIC. So what that means is Suncor could trade with, say, Western Sugar because they're both in a DIC, but not all DICs are the same categories. So some DICs are just DICs because there's one major company in their town. Other DICs, like Commerce City, is a DIC because of all the environmental burdens on the community. So there's sort of these tiers of DIC communities. And then regarding the cost cap threshold, a small win for us was that they're going to look at a portfolio of projects. So rather than a company saying, oh, that project is too expensive, they'll look at maybe 3 or 4 projects and average that out. So that could help our local levels of air pollution. The reason we were concerned about a state fund is because if a company pays into a state fund, the projects could take place not within our community. So it's sort of like that fine that happened in September when the money, rather than being prioritized here in Commerce City, will go to different counties across the state. So another, I think, small win for us is the amount of public comments. So 15 to 20% of the public comments were from Commerce City that came in electronically. These are sort of I went through all the comments and categorized them. The one that I think is really critical is number 4. So like 9% of the people that commented said the rule was inaccessible.
So basically, we had scientists and attorneys that were having a hard time understanding the way the rule was written. And that really doesn't help public members that are trying to understand the rule and comment on the rule when there's so many nuances to the rule. And so that is something that I'm hoping that the state thinks about in the future. And then at the hearing, again, there was a tremendous input from Commerce City. And it was a lot of the same type of concerns, the failure to address DIC communities. The public comment at the hearing centered more around health concerns. So a lot of people talked about their lived experience. They talked about people within their families that are suffering from environmental pollution. And they also talked about the burden of having increased health costs. There's also, I think, support from around the state, and I thought that was really positive. So people in Commerce City understand that there's other people that support them. Okay, and pivoting again, so besides our legislative work, the new division is also doing water and development reviews. And so just a quick update and to put this into perspective, what the difference between E3 looking at development review and community development is. The first one, we had a permit application that they were asking for more water, more ERUs. And rather than saying, okay, and just granting additional ERUs, the staff, Libby Tard, who's here, suggested different landscaping and different plants. So rather than just giving out the water, it's like looking at how people do their landscaping to be more sustainable. So that's an example of how our reviews are changing and transforming. We also did reviews for Mile High Greyhound Park, and we're working with the Growing Water Smart team. And pivoting once again, this is Suncor's information. So we have, historically, we've been tracking these non-compliance hours for the past 5 years, and we've entered all the 2023 data now. And so Plant 1 and 3 are doing a little better than the last 5 years, and Plant 2 is doing worse. So I'm not going to go through each of these exceedances, but we have updated the website, and there's a handout with all these exceedances in your folders, just so it's not so much of an eye chart. But one thing I've tried to do, based on Councilman Noble's comment about making it more understandable, is we are going to have a table now that explains exceedances and the difference between EPCRA, but we're also bolding, what is this? So if you look up here, that in the purple, that first, 1, 2, 3, 4, the fifth column will say, okay, this is the standard, 162 parts per million, and then the next one will say what the emissions were. So you can sort of see what the standard is and what the emission is. And so there's two parts of it. A lot of times it'll be the standard, a level, and then it'll be the time. So, you'll have a 6-minute exceedance, you'll have a 3-hour exceedance. And so both of those are the indicators that are important. And then I wanted to end on a more positive note. And so if you aren't aware, the city was recognized last week with this beautiful plaque. We have joined the Colorado Green Business Network, and we're helping businesses within our community join the network. And so basically, the Colorado Green Business Network is a program where the state will come in and they will help people with free water efficiency audits, energy efficiency audits. So you could join as a business and get this free assistance. And so we joined as a business. So we joined to lead by example, and we were recognized as a bronze business member, which basically means it's on a point system. So you could be a supporting a supporting business, a bronze, a silver, or gold. So bronze, and it's a point system, so we got 25 points, which means we have entered all our data about energy and water use. We've set goals, we have measurable targets. And then we also won a second award for innovation. So they do an innovation spotlight, and we were recognized for our bilingual monthly challenges. So we've been sending out these challenges to residents and businesses, and every month we change the challenge. October's energy efficiency, and so it's just another mechanism to help businesses save money. So with that, I thank you for your time, and Libby Tart and I are here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. At this time, do any council members have any questions for Dr. Russo? Councilmember Noble?
Thank you, and congratulations on the awards. That's wonderful. I just wanted to, I don't know if you said it, but I just wanted to make clear that a DIC is a disproportionately impacted community for anyone who might be listening and isn't as familiar with that acronym. When you mentioned community monitors, do the community monitors also measure VOCs?
Yes, but the community monitors, where they're located makes a big difference. So there's two kinds of monitors. There's the community air monitors that are just showing like the health advisory limits. They're not regulatory monitors. So although they show VOCs, you know, if the facility's here and the community monitor's here, by the time that comes over, it's been dispersed. So the levels are much lower.
That makes sense. And
but we have from GIS actually sent me a great map today where we're mapping out where all the state monitors are, where our current monitors are, where our proposed monitors are, and I'm meeting with Brian from Adams County to see where theirs are, and so we can look at, you know, what you have had a concern about, the gaps. And we were even talking about overlaying some of the facilities with where the monitors are.
good, and I hope we fit in some that measure VOCs too, not just the particulate matter. That'd be great. You mentioned Suncor, EPA, and health, and when Councilmember Chacon and I were on the phone call with the EPA, they were describing how they decide their penalties. And one of the things that they said for criteria was whether it affected the business's bottom line if they didn't share the information. And it seemed that, yes, it could affect a bottom line if the information was shared. So if you are doing a penalty, then why is it the $300,000 or the $600,000? And we got into a conversation about health at that point. What if you actually provided health services to the residents in that area as opposed to lawnmowers? Yes, right, exactly. And they actually took that suggestion in and said that they would consider that. So that was very, very good news. Hopefully in the future that will be the case. I understand that the EPA has been confirmed now for November 27th, which is quite a distance away. I'm very disappointed in that. We have a very short meeting tonight, and I don't know what the schedule is next Monday, but I wish they could have been here to have this conversation this evening. November 27th it is for the EPA to talk about Suncor. Thank you.
Councilmember Chacon.
Thank you, Dr. Russo, for all you do, especially for everything GEM 2 and how that all went down. We were so immersed in it for the EJC. Is there any next steps you'd recommend, honestly, with GEM 2? There's a lot of community members, both that are local and statewide, that are saying, hey, that's polluters being able to pay to pollute, and making pollution a form of common law in some aspects. And you even said yourself, it was inaccessible to DIC just by the language alone. So is there any way that we should pursue, I talk to other spaces, potential civil rights issues, human rights issues, because It's just holding bad actors accountable and having enforceable protections at this point. We're not trying to mess with the industry's bottom line, but if it is so egregious where it's harming to buy the air at this point, we need to be able to have some form of protections. Is there next steps that you can recommend or anything that you've seen so far?
Well, I would say there's a few things that come to mind. The first one is, people can still write that AQCC and just, EPAC is writing a thank you to two of the commissioners that really were considering health effects. And so I think that's one thing to recognize, that the two commissioners that really were trying to be protective of Commerce City. One positive thing that came out of the process was there were several academic institutions that wanted to lend a hand and support Commerce City with our air pollution challenges. So I received a couple calls after the hearings. I think another positive thing that came out of it is the strengthening our relationship with Denver and some of the other cities and counties close by to us. And so I think working on grants to address some of these issues is another option. And then third is keeping it in the public's view with, I know you've written articles, but I think acknowledging what is happening within our community is very important.
Thank you for all your work, Boo, and congratulations as well.
Well, it's the city's award, not mine, but thank you.
Councilmember Kim?
I can find the button. There you go. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Dr. Russo, thank you for the presentation. Congratulations again on the award. Looking back over actually on the event summary right here under September 1st to the 3rd, Plant 1 fluidized catalytic cracking unit. Can you explain a little bit as far as with what are some of these permit terms, maximum reported values, exactly what is that, what am I looking at as far as when it comes to this, as far as what issues occurred during that time frame?
Sure. So what happened during this particular exceedance was there was a pump failure. So basically, the way the permit is written, there's different conditions. So there's a condition about visibility. There's a condition about how much carbon monoxide can get released. And so when you look at that like the first column, so for visibility, so they in 6 minutes, they can't have visibility that exceeds 20%. So then when you look over, they had 18 minutes that it was exceeded, then 6 minutes, then 30 minutes. And so, and it was up to 37%. So it was basically, so a lot of times the events get reported as, okay, this is one event, but really the way the permit is written, these are different conditions, and each one of these is an exceedance. And that is important because when you come up with fines, the fines are supposed to be proportional to the exceedances. And so that's why sometimes the devil's in the details. So we're just trying to show that, this wasn't just, a couple minutes. And we're just.
Right, I see a few that are for 4 hours, 5 hours. I see a bunch on here. I guess my other question too is from a health perspective, I guess, what do you think the residents would have experienced, potentially could have experienced during these times, even whether it's on the first page or the back page?
So carbon monoxide would be respiratory issues.
Right.
So, it could be displacing some oxygen. And so that's the big one for carbon monoxide. But it's not just the carbon monoxide. It's this, it's this cumulative impact of, there's benzene and then there's carbon monoxide and we're in the ozone.
It's a culmination of things that
Yes.
occurred, that has occurred. That
Yeah.
It seems like nothing is really, there's no I'll hold my comment. Go ahead.
Right, and even when I was speaking about the community monitors, if you do go on that website will have specific pollutant and then the health impacts. So that's the one, I mean, not just the one, but that's valuable information, because that'll go into detail. So if you know, sometimes it's like skin irritation. So if you or someone in your family is having dermatitis, then if we can link it back and say, yeah, these many people had that, and it was during this specific release, that makes more of a connection.
Roger that. Question for the Deputy City Manager. I know I've asked Mr. Rogers this before, and we've made a motion already about a month and a half ago to request Suncor to come forward. Have they actually come forward? Have they reached out? Have they wanted to schedule a time to actually meet to discuss some of these concerns and issues?
The 27th is when. November 27th. That's when. That's when EPA is coming. That's when EPA is coming. When EPA is. Yeah. Okay. So they reached out to us, and so Jason and I had an initial conversation with Suncor. We're going to have some future conversations going forward, but at least the conversations have started. That was Friday of last week.
Okay. At some point, I would like for them to come forward to especially speak during public hearing. And it's not much of a. I'd like for it to be a constructive session, essentially, is what I'd like, because especially, we've got a couple of issues, just a small smidgen amount of issues, and I say that, sarcastically, that needs to be addressed, and I think it really needs to come forward before City Council to include residents to be aware as far as what they are planning to do or going to do to fix this.
Yeah, they're absolutely wanting to have a better relationship with the city, all of us, they have a new leadership there now. They're trying to let that person settle in a little bit. They're putting together an entire plan. And so I don't know how long that's going to take, but that's something that is currently being worked on. And at that point, I believe we're going to have a lot more access to them.
Copy that,
I
ma'am?
think the guy's only been in the position for about a month.
Yeah,
or
living
so.
in Canada or somewhere, I think,
months.
somewhere in the
Yeah.
northeast, northwest.
So the ball's on a roll. We're getting there.
All right, roger that. Thank you, ma'am.
You bet.
Thank you, Dr. Rousseau.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Douglas?
Thank you. Is it Mayor Alan Thomas this evening? Thank you. So thank you for all of the hard work. I know how much commitment you put into the work on GEMS 2. So thank you for all of that. Congratulations on the awards. I do want to let everyone know that I get phone calls from constituents that let me know when they've gotten up and are feeling the effects of pollution, especially in the area that's near Suncor. It doesn't always take a report. It sometimes just takes someone calling and sharing their story to say, I'm really feeling the impacts. I'm feeling like I can't breathe. I'm having headaches. I feel like I'm in a fog. I really feel like this is affecting the quality of my life. It is hard to get those phone calls, but I can almost tell you when the exceedances are happening, because I hear from the people who know that I'll listen to them, and I'm not going to brush them off as saying it's not happening, because it is happening. So I appreciate all of the work that you do. We just have to keep fighting to hold those that are here to profit, make money, do their business here where they probably wouldn't be welcome other places. We need to hold them accountable and let them know that there's more to what they're doing to provide benefits who live, to the people who live outside the area, that they are impacting the people who do live here. So keep up the good work. I know we didn't get really what we wanted on GEMS 2. It's a step in the right direction, but we just have to keep on working. So thank you for all that you do.
You're welcome. And, you know, on the other end of it, there are great companies in our community, and a few of them were recognized at the Colorado Business networking event, like Bimbo Bread and Princess Gardens. And so any business that signs up gets put on this national directory. And so it's a great economic development strategy for a business. So if somebody is like in New Jersey saying, oh, I want, you know, sustainable bread, they look on that directory and they could start ordering from, you know, a business within our community. So that's one of the advantages of getting in this program. And then the other thing about health, Councilmember Douglas, is there is a health study. It's specifically for men, but it's for men in a community like ours, and they get $100 for participating. But it's one of the first health studies that is looking at, you know, cumulative impacts from like oil and gas. And so the brochure and the information is up on the city's website. So, you know, if you're getting calls from male constituents, please pass that information along.
Councilmember Chacon?
I just wanted to follow up with that too for cumulative impacts. When we meant it for the EJ Act, it's for particulate pollutants as well, but it's also to the health disparities too, where we start intersecting reproductive health issues, because we know that's also an issue with a lot of particulate pollutants, especially PFAS. And then mental health is incredibly impacted in environmental injustice. So yeah, when it means cumulative impacts, any way that you can form grants that also intersect, but that would be really helpful with the city. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, too. Also, I have a few questions, Dr. Russo. On slide number 6, where it mentions that you met with the URA, the South Adams County Water District staff, and water attorney on the Mile Greyhound Park's water allocations. Can you briefly explain what that means?
Do you want to, Livy? I'll turn it over to my partner in crime. Here, here's one. Yeah. Okay.
Hello, Mayor Pro Tem. That we met with the URA and the South Adams County Water and Sanitation District staff, along with our water attorneys, to just kind of establish what our water allocations are for Mile High Greyhound Park, because it's a pretty complicated formula. And so we, you know, as we are developing the Greyhound Park, we really want to make sure that we're on top of the water allocations and ensuring that if the developers of the park need to purchase extra water ERUs, that we're coming up with the right formula, if that makes sense.
Okay, so that's not meaning like it's contaminated or anything, is it?
No.
Okay. all
Most
right.
definitely not.
Okay,
Yes.
great. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank
All right, and thanks. And then the rest are for Dr. Russo. But the environmental reportable events summary, those are done by Suncor, correct?
Right, they legally have to self-report.
Okay.
A lot of businesses self-report.
All right, okay.
And I should have probably said ERUs is like equivalent residential units, so it's just a measure of how much water people, residents or businesses get.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, thank you, because just concerns too, like I said, they mention what was reported, et cetera, and then like one of the pages, it says maximum reported value, 192 PPEs and flares for 3 hours rolling average. So besides fines, who follows up with when they give this report? You know, what happens next? Or
So what happens next is the Colorado Department of Public Health and the Environment, they they look at and they go and they do an audit. And, you know, the fines that just came out in August and September, they were from 2020. So it's not a fast process. But that's how it, so they self-report this, and then CDPHE follows up for most of the permit ones. If it's one of those EPCRA ones, Emergency Planning Community Rights, those ones where there's 500 pounds in 24 hours, EPA sometimes will step in, because EPA is the ultimate authority over the state.
Okay, all right. Okay, thank you, Dr. Russo, and congratulations on your award. I think I have one more council member with other questions. Councilmember Noble?
Sorry, I just wanted to follow up on something. There was some public information given out last week, not by the city, but from others, and I think it gets muddy and confusing, that the Cherokee plant has, the XL Energy Cherokee plant has something to do with Commerce City. It doesn't. It's in unincorporated Adams County in Denver, basically. And in addition, there was some confusion as to whether it operates on coal. It has not operated on coal. It is today. It doesn't operate on coal today. It's gas-fired. That doesn't mean it's not a polluter, but it is quite different than Suncor. So I just wanted to make that point because we do have a lot of toxic industry in that southern area, but the differences, I think, are important as well. Thank you again.
You're welcome.
Thanks again, Dr. Russo, appreciate it.
And happy birthday, Mr. Talbot.
Okay, next we are moving on to a discussion of a ban on the sale of dogs and cats in pet stores in the city. I would like to invite the Dylan Gibson City Clerk to give the presentation.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and honorable members of the City Council. Dylan Gibson, City Clerk for the city. And with me tonight, I have Genevieve Jean Gill via Zoom, and I'll let Sarah introduce her.
Jean is our newest attorney to join our office, and this was her pet project. Okay.
Well,
Right
it can only
along.
go up from here. So, the agenda for tonight's presentation will be a discussion on the current C3 regulations, what other surrounding municipalities have done, legal considerations, an overview of the draft ordinance, and then an opportunity for any questions or direction. So for Commerce City currently, we do not have an outright ban on the sale of puppies and kittens in pet stores or anywhere else in the city. The city code authorizes the licensing of hobby breeders and commercial kennels. A hobby breeder is an annual renewal that only allows no more than 6 dogs or cats over the age of 6 months old to be hosted, sold, and transferred. We do have one cattery license in the city of Commerce City for a, I think it's a Bengal cattery. The state of Colorado, through the Department of Agriculture, issues an annual PACFA license, which is the Pet Animal Care and Facilities Act. And then the U.S. Department of Agriculture issues the AWA license, which is the Animal Welfare Act, and all commercial kennels and hobby breeders have to comply with those annual licensing as well as the city's licensing. So for surrounding municipalities, Aurora just recently passed an ordinance very similar to what we've drafted here tonight. Lafayette had considered at one of their council meetings, continued it to a workshop, and I have not seen it on their agenda to be brought back for their discussion quite yet. Durango introduced an ordinance, but that failed. And then Breckenridge, Dillon, Eagle, Fairplay, Fountain, Silverthorne, Superior, Vale, and other Colorado cities have passed ordinances banning the sale of puppies and kittens. And our ordinance has borrowed some of their language and regulations from those cities that have passed their own regulations. I will note that the state of Colorado in the past couple of years have had a statewide consideration for a very similar set of regulations, but that has failed in committee both times. So some legal considerations. There are basically 2 ways to create legislation for this issue. The first would be a regulation-style ordinance that would create a set of defined regulations that pet stores and affiliated operations are required to comply with in order to guarantee the humane treatment of animals involved in the industry. Or secondly, would just be a complete ban of the sale of dogs and cats in pet stores altogether without creating any sort of regulations. The narrowly tailored ordinance, which is option 1, tends to draw less objections. However, they can be difficult to enforce and can be therefore less effective. Additionally, animal rights activists complain that the regulations required under the AWA are more about survival rather than any sort of comfort and do not offer a comprehensive guarantee of animal welfare. And there's also concern about the opportunity for loopholes when there are too many definitions and specifications because it can become too convoluted. Entities who have started with a regulatory structure and ultimately moved to a total ban cited these issues as their reason for their amendment to a total ban. The biggest concern of local pet stores is that the ban will cause them to go out of business. The larger groups whose business would also be affected are the brokers and breeders across the country who facilitate those local stores' acquisition of the animals sold in the stores. Opposing groups have also claimed that forcing people to go to breeder locations for purchases may be cost prohibitive for some families and could force people to the internet, which could potentially be more dangerous in terms of looking for the next family pet. 7 states and 14 Colorado cities have enacted similar legislation and complaints that bans are discriminatory against commercial breeders and favor small breeders and the rescue industry. Some statements made by the courts in support of the legislation include that the AWA is a licensing system and it does not preempt other laws regarding animal welfare. The goals are legitimate for governmental concerns and rational to think that an ordinance would serve those goals. And there's no direct discrimination that is in violation of the Dormant Commerce Clause. The draft ordinance that we have included in the packet and that we can bring back at a future council meeting if this council desires defines the difference between a pet store versus an animal care facility, an animal rescue facility, an animal shelter, hobby breeders, and commercial kennels. This bans the sale of dogs and cats in pet stores in total. Pet stores may offer space for adoptions, but they need to have a certificate of source, which includes the name of the care or the rescue facility where the animal was acquired, and they cannot own the pet or acquire a fee for the space from those animal shelters. Violations issued in accordance with the Commerce City Revised Municipal Code for anyone that violates this draft ordinance. And then with that, I'll answer any questions, comments, or concerns. And again, we do have Sarah and Jean here to answer anything from the legal side. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gibson. At this time, do any council members have any questions? Councilmember Kim?
Since I'm the one that brought this up, I guess there was a comment in there that stated that you're saying that all small businesses right now who currently sell pet supplies and whatnot would go out of business. How so?
That's their claim. It's on them to prove that, yeah. That's what they claim in other cities that, I believe it was when Aurora was considering theirs a couple weeks ago, somebody that owned a pet store that sells puppies or kittens in Centennial came to the Aurora meeting since they're adjoining our abutting municipalities, saying that they're worried about that ordinance coming into Centennial and putting them out of business since they wouldn't be able to sell puppies or kittens.
I think it's not really much of an issue to say that, you know, when it comes down to if you have adopting, you know, from a rescue, a shelter or whatnot, I think that's fine. If they are a business who is willing to go that route to bring in other rescues to sell, then that's great. That's the primary reason for this request. You know, as a dog owner too, who's from a rescue, you know, we have a lot of dogs and cats that are out there being put up for adoption. And to enact something that would not allow for any form of puppy mills or mills in general to be created is something is what the intent of this ordinance would be. So with that said, your options of 1 and 2 sounds like 2 would be the way to go, is what you're saying?
The outright ban, yes.
Right. And I think, right. Okay. Thank you so much for the presentation. I think it's good. Honestly, I would go with the second option, in my opinion.
Yeah, I believe that's how the draft ordinance is. after December 31st of 2023, pet stores could no longer sell any puppies or kittens in the city, so they'd have a couple months to transition if this was adopted. And then they could use that space that they've already built in their facility to offer it for adoption from other shelters or rescues.
And you had mentioned also in there, like, was it Durango? It failed in Durango? What was the reason why it failed?
I couldn't find any minutes in terms of public comment or council discussion. I didn't go back and rewatch the video to kind of find how their council or their board kind of determined whether or not to, or determined to vote against that ordinance.
And essentially, we'd be joining 12 to about 14 others.
I think it's 14 other cities
14 other
after
cities.
Aurora passed theirs a couple weeks ago. Yeah.
Okay. I'm on board with it. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Councilmember Douglas?
Thank you. Yeah, this is kind of a tough one for me because we have two daughters who have given us the most delightful grand puppies ever. One of them was bought from a puppy mill. It was a pet store who had the puppies set up. And the other one, our daughter spent thousands of dollars for a dog that was bred. Our daughter, who bought from the puppy mill when she was buying the dog, called and said, "What do you think? I want this dog. I want her so bad." And I tried to talk her out of it. I said, "You know, you're going to have problems with this dog." And she did. Tens of thousands of dollars later. So she probably spent 5 times as much, maybe more than that, than our daughter who bought from the breeder. I love the puppy mill dog. I love both of them so much. But the puppy mill dog actually probably saved our daughter's life because it helped her get through some really tough times that she was going through emotionally. And so, like I said, this is a hard one for me, but I don't know, for people to take that chance of buying from a puppy mill, falling in love with an animal, and then taking a chance on losing it because they don't have the money to pay for the health expenses is, and she didn't have the money, so she went into debt. She used credit card debt to pay the vet, and so it's kind of a vicious circle. But in the end, I'm going to say that it's probably the smartest thing to do a ban, because maybe then we'll put the puppy mills out of business, and not the pet stores, but the puppy mills. It's kind of inhumane, actually, to breed dogs and sell them that way. And so in the end, sorry for the long story, but I want everyone to understand that I see both sides of it, but in the end, I think the ban is probably the smartest thing to do.
Thank you, Councilmember Douglas.
Thank you. I would just like to add that I'm in support of the ban as well. I think it's important. Rescue is really important. We have English bulldogs, and most of them are even puppies from Rescue. Rescue Inc. There's the Bulldog Club of Denver, and it's through the Rescue. So, thank you, and that's all I have. And thank you, Mr. Gibson, for the presentation.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Next, we are going to move on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda includes items that are routine, procedural, informational, self-explanatory, or non-controversial. These items are presented to council for a single motion and vote. Any member of council may ask to remove a specific item off the consent agenda for further discussion and a separate vote. Tonight, we have 3 items on the consent agenda. Do any members of council wish to remove an item from the consent agenda? Councilmember Douglas.
Yes, thank you. I would like to remove Resolution 2023-100, please.
Okay, thank you. Any, Councilmember Chacon?
I second supporting Councilmember Douglas.
Okay, thank you. Any other council members? Okay, thank you. I need a motion and second to approve the consent agenda as amended to remove Resolution 2023-100. Councilmember Noble?
So moved.
Councilmember Douglas?
Second, please.
At this time, I would like to ask the city clerk to read the titles and take a roll call vote.
Minutes of the September 11th, 2023 regular meeting. Minutes of the September 18th, 2023 regular meeting. And then Brittany, can you get their vote? And your vote is open. The consent agenda will pass with 8 in favor and 1 excused absence, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. At this time, I would like to invite Councilmember Douglas to explain why she removed item Resolution 2023-100.
Thank you, Mayor Alan Thomas. I decided that I would like to move this resolution from the consent agenda because I did not feel that it was something that belonged on the consent agenda. I think this is something that needs to be called attention to. Resolution 2033-100 does give the city money to work towards affordable housing. Unfortunately, right now, there is no such thing as affordable housing. I'll use an example. There's a constituent who lived in their place for 20 years. They recently were evicted. And they went to both Connor Estates and they went to Del West. They could not rent there because they didn't qualify. They didn't make enough money. And the reason that they're getting evicted is because the landlord wants them out of the place that they were in for 20 years because they can get more money by renting it to someone else. And I think this Proposition 123 made it look like we were going to provide affordable housing using this money. But what I can see is that they are going to use it to basically hand over to developers to build more housing. So if the housing isn't affordable to begin with to meet the needs of the average everyday person, why are we building more? Why aren't we taking care of the properties that we do have that are unsuitable for people to live in? And that's why we're looking at passing a possible ordinance so that we can at least go in and start inspecting properties so that we can get the landlords to make them livable. And right now that's not happening. We've had time and time again where we've had citizens come in communication to let us know that their rents are increasing. They can't make those payments. that they're using most of their income to put a roof over their heads, or they're paying very high rents for something that no one wants to live in. The living conditions are so substandard, but the rents are high. And so that's why I'm taking this off the consent agenda. I really think that we need to look at this. I don't think that we should just keep handing out money to people that are going to operate with very little oversight or to meet reasonable demands of our citizens. And so although I am not turning away money, but I'm asking that we take a really hard look at this. That's when we voted on this, and I did vote for Proposition 123 when it was on the ballot because it sounded great. But when you start peeling back those layers and looking at what's really happening, it's not so great. $300 million a year, that's a lot of money. That's our taxpayer dollars, though. And we're handing it over to developers who pretty much have free rein. I've heard a lot of problems. So far, I haven't made it over to talk to the people, but I've had people talk to me about problems that they're having at the landing at Del West already, and that's a brand-new building. I've heard many complaints and met with people from Connor Estate. Same thing. You know, they're on a fixed income, but the rents keep going up. And people can't afford to live, and we wonder why we have a homeless problem. You know, here we are in 2023, and it feels like 2008 all over again. I've also had phone calls about the possibility of people losing their house. They have a lot of equity, but that's when the mortgage companies start seeking those people out because those houses are easy to own. And the banks can make a lot of money off them if the person who only owes $75,000, $100,000 on a house that's worth over $5,000, they're going to start using tactics that are predatory to get those houses. They don't care if the people have to leave and they don't have any place to go, or if they grew up in that house, or all they know is that they have high market value and there's a lot of equity to be had there. And it becomes a cash cow for the predators. So I just want everyone to take a real hard look at this 123 so that when we take the money, we are really scrutinizing what the developers are doing, what the landlords are doing, where this money is going. It cannot be money that is just taken and then it's like, oh, everything's great. And we don't know what's happening because, hey, they promised us it would, you know, this is going to solve the housing crisis when it's not. So I'm not making a motion to deny or anything like that. I took it off the agenda so that we would have a chance to really think about this and take a good hard look at the housing crisis, the homelessness crisis, and that we can make really good decisions going forward so that maybe we can make some kind of contribution to solving these problems. Thank you.
Thank you. So Councilmember Douglas, you're not making a motion, correct?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Madera.
Yeah, can staff just kind of introduce what this proposition does and what adopting this would do for the city?
I'll stand up if y'all don't mind, so I can figure this mic out, but and I'm more comfortable standing up to speak. So a lot of great points that Councilmember Douglas made. Couple of things I would say, though, is this money is out there. It's not going directly to developers. We still have the opportunity with the development to decide if we want it in our community or not, if the zoning is correct or if we have opportunity. What this does give us is access to money for housing rehabilitation to help improve the housing of our existing population, to try to keep people in their naturally occurring affordable housing that might not be able to otherwise. We can apply for money for emergency rental assistance. We can apply for money for land banking, as we discussed at the last meeting, where we have the opportunity maybe to start getting some affordable housing in mixed income communities that we can control if we can control the property that is not in the core city. We can spread it out and get opportunities in other places. So this money gives us the opportunity, if we have access to it, that we can do some things to change the course of what affordable houses become. When affordable housing is only done through low-income housing tax credits, you lose some control there because we don't have a dog in that fight, other than the fact that our housing authority has a very negligible interest in it to allow the housing tax credits, but we don't have any other way to affect what it does. But if we have these dollars where we can put some money in the projects, where we can then control and say, we want these, a certain number of these units be at 30% of AMI. And one of the problems is 60% of area median income now is a very high figure. And if you've got a 60% project, they're going to rent most of them for 60. If we can control it, we can say we want X number at 30, X number at 50, X number at 60, whatever. And if a developer wants our money and wants to then partner with tax credit, then we have a say in it and we can get that approval. So I think this gives us a lot more opportunity to control our own destiny than if we sit back and, if we sit back, nothing's going to happen because nobody can use any of the money here until the next cycle comes around and we think about it. But it does give us the opportunity, if we want to truly get aggressive in how we handle affordable housing, to do that. And we are working on, as we told you last week in the study session, bringing an affordable housing policy forward where you could approve, this is where we will use money, the type of projects we will welcome and approve, and these are the things we want. So again, I think it's an incredible opportunity that, it's hard to pass up the opportunity for $300 million a year. And again, I think we can control a lot more than we maybe think we can and have done in the past.
So, earlier we had a resident that, was asking for handicap, ADA compliant units and things of that nature. Would that be something that we could request if we had this money? And
if we are participating in doling out the money, then yes, we can put those requirements in. If we, the housing built under the tax credits is going to comply with code and probably not go much further than that. We can influence things like getting more disabled units, getting more ground floor, getting those opportunities built in apartments or houses. And we can do some things to try to encourage and partner to get some affordable home ownership also, which is that's a market that's being entirely missed. We're not getting anything that's affordable home ownership, and there are folks out there that could if we had the opportunities.
And under the current model that is mostly used here, who sets the rents, the maximum rents for these low income?
Rents are set by they're fair housing rents that are set by, I always get this confused. They're either by the state or by the feds, but they're working together. But they're based on rents in the region, and that whatever that rent is what that property can charge for that property, for that rent. And then if somebody has a Section 8 voucher, the Section 8 voucher pays a certain percent, but then the property owner still has to pay some out of their own pocket for, again, I hadn't dealt with 20%, I think is what they have to pay. The rule is nobody can pay, with a Section 8 voucher, they can't pay more than 30% of their income for rent and utilities on a property. So, again, with our rents, our fair market rent being as high as it is, that sometimes does cause a gap. Again, because most of the projects we have are 60 or 80% AMI projects as opposed to 30% AMI.
And what determines the AMI for a region? Is it by city, county, or?
It's by the metro area. Those are set by, through the census and by HUD nationally.
So we get looped in with Denver and
Yes, sir.
all these surrounding cities that,
Yes, sir.
have higher median incomes?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Councilmember Douglas?
Thank you. I noticed in the presentation that it said that staff is already working on like an ordinance or something for affordable housing. I was wondering if there are members of council who would like to weigh in and serve as advisors, because we're the connection to the community. Would you consider that?
We fully intend to bring it to a study session to the entire council and have a good bit of discussion on it.
Right, but what I see a lot of times, my last 2 years on council, nearly 2 years, is that something has been worked on with no impact or advice or direction. And then it comes to us in a study session. It's kind of like, here it is. And so we ask for your blessing. And I would rather see it where, since this is impacting our constituents so much, that we have weigh-in from the get-go, so it's not brought to us in a study session where we say, we've done all this work on this, please say yes. I don't want to see that happen. So, just an ask. You don't have to
Let me
say
discuss
yes.
it with the city manager and see how we can best do that.
All right.
I think I hear where you're coming from.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I guess now I need a motion to put it back on, or whoops, I'm sorry, Councilmember Madera.
Move to approve Resolution 2023-100.
Do I have a second? Councilmember Ford?
I'll second that.
Thank you. At this time, I would like the clerk to read the title and take a voice vote.
Resolution 2023-100, a resolution affirming the City of Commerce City's intent to commit to increasing its baseline of affordable housing units in the city and other requirements of Proposition 123, and authorizing the City of Commerce City's filing of the City of Commerce City's commitment with the state's Division of Housing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. That will pass 7 in favor, 1 nay, and 1 excused absence. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Gibson. Next, at this time, we are moving on to resolutions. Resolution 2023-063, South Platte Crossing Affordable Housing Development Funding Agreement. At this time, I would like to invite Jenna Hahn, Executive Management Analyst, to introduce the item.
Good evening, City Council. We are here this evening to resume our discussion about the Affordable Housing Assistant Agreement between the city and the developer for the South Platte Crossing Affordable Housing Project to help fill a funding gap of $750,000. As a quick refresher, this project has been awarded the competitive 9% LIHTC funding credit from the state, and it will deliver 60 new affordable housing units to residents of Commerce City, including units rented at 30 and 40% AMI. This project is fully entitled and has received all zoning and land use approvals. Staff reviewed and approved the parking plan during that entitlement process, and we have found that the project meets all parking requirements outlined in the code. Council last considered this item in May, and overall, Council liked the proposed affordable housing agreement, but had 2 requests for change within the document that have since been added to the agreement that's in your packet this evening. Those notable changes are that the city can now claw back reimbursement if the property does not meet the standards outlined in that agreement, and that the city must review and approve the property manager for this development. On that note, I am pleased to share that the developer has opted to not continue to pursue to work with ComCap, which was one of Council's prior concerns. Dr. Russo has also had the opportunity to review this project and has found that it is compatible with the city's policies and goals. She also determined that this development will be built to higher standards than many other buildings in the city. Finally, Dr. Russo has confirmed that the site has no existing air quality violations. Separately, and to reiterate, this project will contribute 60 new affordable housing units to the city's baseline of affordable housing, which will help us to meet our commitment to Proposition 123, which we just finished discussing. So the developer is here this evening. They're happy to give a presentation if council would like. I'm also happy to answer any questions council still has about the agreement, and the developer is happy to ask or answer your questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hahn. At this time, do any council members have any questions for staff? Councilmember Douglas?
Thank you. So passing this resolution would give this project $750,000 from taxpayer money to go towards this development. Is that correct?
We are not the only ones helping to fill that funding gap, no.
Okay, so, but they're coming to the city for that $750,000?
They are coming to the city for part of that gap, but not the full gap.
Okay. How did this project get this far? This project is on a parking lot, correct? It'll be built on the parking lot.
This project has gone through full entitlement and has been approved for development, correct?
And it was approved administratively?
I would have to ask Director Tolbert, or, yeah, that was before his time, before my time as well.
Okay, so was there any zoning or?
Absolutely, all projects must comply with zoning.
So how do you do zoning on a parking lot? That's privately owned, isn't it, by the Urban Institute?
My apologies, I'm not a city planner. I wish
That's
I could
all right.
answer that question better for you.
Please don't see my questions as an attack in any
No,
way.
I don't. I do not know.
This is, this project has been very questionable in my mind since the get-go. I've been over there many times, driving over there, trying to figure out how this is going to work and how it's going to impact the other people who live in those neighborhoods off of Colorado Boulevard. And then to hear that we're thinking about buying a sixth floor in that building, Adams Tower is what we're calling it. And people saying, you might reconsider because there's a lot of dust and probably contaminants in the air because it's a concrete company that's across well, there's definitely a concrete mixing company, which I understand that they produce water from the fracking wells to mix into their concrete, which I guess is perfectly legal, beyond my comprehension. I don't know how that happens, but, if it's legal, it's legal. They can get away with it. But not considering how it might impact the people who are already living there. I just don't understand how anybody could have thought that this was a good idea. I've also been over in the Elaria Swansea area where they have built low-income projects, and it's next to fenced-up lots that are filled with huge tanks of contaminants. I don't know why people who have less income are expected to live in areas that can impact their health. I don't understand it. I know a lot of those people who when they bought houses over there, all that industry was not there. The industry was somehow allowed to move in. And that to me was poor planning. I don't know how it happened. It did, and now they're having to live with that. And you hear about people coming up. We just had a gentleman come up tonight and mention the traffic going up and down the street. I believe it's 68th, where there's an elementary school. And we can't even control those trucks from not taking the proper route, which would be not through the neighborhood, but to stay on Colorado Boulevard. There are so many industrial sites that are next to Waste Management, and it blows my mind how people could have thought that it was okay to give the okay for those industrial businesses to move in and operate right next door to where people had planned on probably spending the rest of their lives in the house that they love. And obviously, I cannot support this tonight, but those are my reasons. And I want everybody else to understand what my reasons are, to maybe make you stop and think about what we're doing, because it seems like we haven't made great decisions in the past, and we need to start making great decisions going forward. Thank you.
Before Mayor Pro Tem Alan Thomas got up, she asked if I could call a 10-minute break when she was done. So I think that's what we should be on, a 10-minute break till 7:43. We'll return. Thank you.
Turn my mic. This time I'd like to can you call all the other council members back in, ready to continue with the meeting? Councilmember Madera, we're going to continue with the questions on Resolution 2023-063. Councilmember Madera?
So you mentioned that there'd be units for 30 to 40% of AMI. Do you know what the rent for one of those units would be?
The developer probably does, and I'm happy to call Mr. Todd Lieberman up to answer that question.
Good evening. My name is Todd Lieberman. I'm with Bryn Shore Development, and we are one of the developers, along with Nesbitt Development, of SP Crossing, which we're very excited about here in Commerce City. The rents start at $600 a month, $640 actually, and go all the way up to about $2,000. This is a mixed income development. We serve people under 30% AMI all the way to 80% AMI. And there are a variety of rents based on what income levels people are. So it's an effort to attract a variety of residents to this development to be able to serve people of all different income levels. We also accept vouchers. I know there was a conversation earlier about that. So if someone has a housing choice voucher, they can come to the development and they pay no more than 30% of their income.
And what's the average percentage of AMI that this development would be?
It goes from 30% to 80%. The average is 60% by federal requirements.
So in total, it'll never go above that 60%?
Yeah, some are down to 30%, some are up to 80%. We're actually serving a lot at the 30, 40, and 50% range and the 70 and 80% range because there are a lot of developments that serve just 60% AMI in the target market around here. So we are very focused on trying to get a wide range of people into this development.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Then my next question is for Dr. Russo. So CDPHE used to have a air monitor in that precise location. Do you know why they moved it?
I don't know why they moved it. I think that was before my time, but we are trying to coordinate with them to make sure that air monitors will be in any parts of the city, and one near Brandon would be probably a good location, so we could discuss that with them.
Did you review the readings from the air monitor that was previously at that location?
No, I just reviewed that application from the developer, so that wasn't part of the material I looked at.
Okay, yeah, I think it's been probably 2 or 3 years since they moved it. I think once the other network of air monitors in the area came in, I think that's around the time that they moved that one.
In the letter, and Jennifer stated it, I did check with Adams County and CDPHE, and they are in good standing with both those agencies in terms of air pollution.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Noble?
Yes, thank you. Why is there a shortfall?
Why is there a funding gap?
Why is there a shortfall in funding? Yes. A funding gap, either way?
That is pretty typical with all developments. Developers go to a variety of sources to get funds.
It's my understanding that CHAPA usually comes through on affordable housing projects. There should not be a funding gap unless it's not meeting certain criteria of CHAPA.
So the project is receiving funds from CHAFA, they're receiving funds from the state, and they're also receiving funds from Adams County.
Could you explain?
Yes, so the project has about 7 sources of financing. One of the sources that we anticipated for this project was a sales tax and use tax rebate, which is what we're requesting here from Commerce City. And that has been in the capital stack and something that we've requested and would like to be in this project to cover the sources required to build the project.
Why do you have a funding gap? I thought we had given substantial sum before.
There's been no money given to the project from Commerce City.
All right, good.
This has always been the request, and this is finalization of that request.
All right, fine.
Yeah.
So it's the other project across the street that I'm mixing
Yes, so
with yours.
the Colorado Boulevard project, it's separate, and that's what we allocated the PAB allocation to last year.
And that was a substantial sum.
That was our allocation for the year,
Yeah.
yes, but that was for a separate project.
To answer your question, we're approaching closing, and this is a very important piece of the financing that will allow us to move forward. And we really appreciate your consideration for this project.
And it's 60 units?
It's 60 units, yes.
And how many parking spots did the city require?
I believe there are 60. And what is
You
it?
have 3-bedroom units in this apartment building, correct?
There are 60 units provided on the separate lot that this is on.
I can't,
Oh, it was. No. Sorry. There are 60 spaces provided on the site that this building is on. There are 30 more that has a shared use agreement with Adams Tower that does not reduce Adams Tower below the number that are required for Adams Tower. That was part of the PUD that was approved in early 2021.
and how many 3-bedrooms?
4? 3? Yeah. And also we understand that the RTD station is recently built and is underutilized right now. We're providing passes to all the residents for free, NECO passes or NECO passes, so that they can ride either bus or rail. And that is our hope, is that'll provide them an option as well as parking. So that's a unique amenity that we hope will be of use.
That's really a great idea.
Yeah.
It is a bit of a desert there.
Yeah.
No food, no restaurants, no shops. You have to be able to go somewhere.
Right.
It's interesting about transit-oriented development is that typically it's near something significant, like the N line, for example. But on the other hand, nobody goes anywhere anymore.
I guess the question is the chicken or the egg, right? Are we on the front end or are we on the back end at this point?
Right.
I think it's hopeful that there'll be other development around that station.
Yeah, I hope more comes in. Thank you.
Councilmember Douglas, did you have another question?
Yes, I saw in the presentation that your community supporters, one of them is University Prep. And I know that they had come to the Adams 14 School District to get approval, and they were denied that. I wondered, what is your relationship with University Prep? I also had a developer who approached me wanting to build so that University Prep could be their property as well, which I thought was very interesting. But I did notice that on the presentation, and I was wondering what your connection to them and why you would choose them to use as community supporters.
So they were involved with the C4 initiative adjacent to the site at Adams Tower. So I think that list of community partners was the group of people or the group of organizations that were involved with the C4 program. So I don't believe they're still involved there.
They're not. It was a letter of support they provided in 2021.
And they provided a letter of support back in 2021 to the project. So I think that might be a little bit dated, but we obviously appreciated their support, but that was back in 2021. We received a letter of support from them.
Okay, thank you.
Through ULC's relationship.
Yeah, and I should note too that there was a question about development on the site. We are actually ground leasing the site from ULC, so Urban Land Conservancy, and this has always been their intent when they acquired the property, was to build an affordable housing development on this parcel. So that is, we are essentially building what they had intended to over the long term develop, which was a campus that had some affordable housing near the train station as well as the community uses. So. You're welcome.
Councilmember Chacon?
Thank you. I have a couple questions. Did you work with any kind of disproportionately impacted community or equity analysis, like outreach or I suppose even an oversight committee?
We've been working closely with the Urban Land Conservancy and the C4 group over the time that they've been trying to get this project developed. So that's really, we came in when they were seeking a development partner to effectuate that, to build this project. And we've, want to build according to the goals that they established, the Urban Land Conservancy.
And I don't know if this is for Dr. Russo or you, but it mentions that the revitalization, from Russo, the revitalization of brownfield properties in the presentation is the type of infill that will reduce transportation emissions. I'm curious how so, if there's already, I'm concerned about the cumulative impact. So with that many parking spaces, that much more traffic coming in, cumulatively with the cement space across from there, it's still a transportation space. You already mentioned RTD is still not up to par with its own space too. We still live 80% on a carbon grid. I know that regulation is not necessarily up to date with those type of protections. Look at GEM 2. But how are we being mindful to think about that a little bit before lawmakers do too?
So the comment about the infill is because it's not single-family residence and it's not spread out. That's the lens I was looking at, that it will lower our transportation emissions. Also because the RTD there, and people can use that to get to work and go shopping and to the food desert, we could work with the developer actually to put in, we want to do more community gardens all throughout the community, so that would be a perfect place to put a community garden. The one we did at Village Crest is an example of that too, like bringing more affordable food here. So that's what that comment was in reference to, just that it was closer to, the core of the city, and rather than spreading out with these single-family residents, when you build up and you build closer to public transportation, it's better for the emissions.
Thank you. And just being mindful for an oversight committee or something that's more appropriate to the community. Community gardens are really great, but it's food security that community is going to need. So it muddles the line that community gardens might do that, but it's not a lasting food justice. And that's kind of what I'm concerned about this, is what is the lasting equity analysis for when RTD does eventually be able to help, but right now that it doesn't, we're not going to add to or create a redlined community.
Yeah, I agree with you. We did, as part of the Sustainability Action Plan, we had food access maps, and that was an area we definitely need to work on. You're welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Russo. Before you leave, I have a few questions also. Thank you. Because I know it wasn't included in our packet or anything, but did you actually, regarding the environmental issues, I know you said you contacted CDPHE and other organizations, but did you actually go to the site as well, and have you seen the site?
I have seen the site. I contacted CDPHE and Adams County, because that's the local and the state air pollution regulators. What was the second part of your question? Sorry.
Yeah, well, I'm saying you actually went to the physical site.
Yeah, I actually drive past there every morning. That's
Okay.
when I'm coming in on 270. And so, yeah, I have gone by the Ready Mix, and I went to the towers.
Because that was my next question. By chance, did you talk to any of the employees or anything that work in the tower buildings and see how they felt?
No, I haven't. But, when I discussed the site with CDPHE, I mean, the fact that you have a developer doing a voluntary cleanup, that's a great thing for the city, because these cleanups are very expensive. So if we're sharing that cost, and CDPHE said they would give us all that documentation, and it has to be certified by a third party. So it's not like they are going to say, oh, we're cleaning it up to 10 parts per million, and they don't do that. So when you do a voluntary cleanup, there's a third party that comes in that CDPHE chooses, and so those voluntary cleanups have a lot of oversight.
Thinking, just one thing that's kind of concerning to me, we don't know approximate when those monitors will go back up.
We have a meeting with Adams County. I have a meeting with Adams County on Thursday. So we have our map now, we have the state's map, and Adams County has a map. So we're getting much closer, and we have the money to do it. So
we don't know a date. It could be 6 months, a year.
Well, the grant, we're trying to do it within the year, this year.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Dr. Russo. That's all I had. Thank you. Okay. At this time, I'm going to ask the city clerk, Dylan Gibson, to read the title.
Mayor Pro Tem, I believe you need a motion on the floor first.
Oops, I'm sorry. Whoop. Thank you, thanks, okay. Yeah, at this time, I need a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 2023-063. Councilmember Kim.
So moved.
Councilmember Ford.
Second.
Okay. So at this time, I'm going to ask the city clerk to read the title.
Resolution 2023-063, a resolution approving the South Platte Crossing Affordable Housing Development Funding Assistance Agreement between the City of Commerce City and 72nd Colorado LLC. Would you like me to call the vote as well?
Oh,
Ms.
yes,
Whitcomb?
please, thank you.
No worries. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
I believe I heard 3, so that would pass 4 in favor, 3 opposed, with 1 excused absence.
I think
Wait.
that's only 8.
Was that
No,
4-4?
I thought it's 4. Can we do like a?
We can roll call if you would like to
we'll
request
do a
one.
roll call. Yeah.
Your vote is open. Close.
Or we can have any discussion?
I thought we already did discussion, didn't we, Sarah? We did do discussion.
Actually, no, I didn't hear a discussion after the motion was seconded, but
Okay.
it passed, it looks like.
We don't need discussion, correct? Since we've already voted, correct?
Sarah?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay,
If somebody wants to say something and Mayor Pro Tem, you'd like to
Did you
allow
want-
for the record some discussion, that's fine now also.
Did you still want to say something, Council? Okay, all right, thank you. Moving on to Resolution 2023-113, a resolution appointing members to various boards and commissions of Commerce City. Do any council members have any questions for staff? So at this time, I need a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 2023-113. Councilmember Hurst.
So moved.
Councilmember Kim.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Councilmember Noble.
Yes, I just wanted to point out for the body that we had approved previously that there would be term limits for members of boards, and that if there was another person who was interested and qualified, that we would move that person into the role. The member who will be moving from alternate to regular member had been a regular member but was moved to alternate because of length of service. So by this action, you are moving someone who's been on the board for about 20 years back into a regular role. It was considerable discussion at the Boards and Commissions meeting.
Do any other council members have any discussion? Okay, at this time, let's see. So at this time, I'm going to ask the city clerk to read the title.
Can I get a motion on the floor, Mayor Pro Tem?
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Okay. At this time, I need a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 2023-113.
I'm sorry, I believe we did with Councilmember Hurst making the motion and Councilmember Kim seconding. I'm sorry. Resolution 2023-113, a resolution appointing members to designated boards and commissions of Commerce City. All those in favor say aye.
Well, before they vote, just another point if there's discussion this time, just so we don't miss
Okay.
it.
Thank you.
So, okay, so now we're, all those in favor?
I think,
Just Mayor Pro Tem, if there's discussion, if you want to give
Oh, I thought we did
members of council an
discussion.
opportunity to discuss. Oh, did they discuss already?
Yeah, we
Okay,
did discussion.
Sorry about that, go ahead.
Okay. So at this time, I'd like, all those in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? So motion passes 7-1.
correct. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you.
Sorry about the confusion.
That's okay. Thanks. Next, we are moving on to administrative business. Are there any council members that have administrative business items of an emergency or unforeseen circumstance? Councilmember Noble.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank a constituent who drew attention to the question of whether signs were illegal or legal in Commerce City, and that began an investigation. So in June 24th, when I had my town hall, he came up to me after that. I drove around quite a bit, and July 7th, I sent my first email to the city. In the northern area, I got an email on Friday that there were actually around 52 violations found. I think it's important when we pass ordinances that the ordinance applies to everybody and not just to a few. So I really want to express my gratitude to the constituent who brought it to my attention, other than the fact every time I'm driving along, all I see are signs now. So as soon as I get that off my mind, that'll be even better. And the second thing I have is that I would like to get a status on the underpass for East 96th Avenue. Where are we on getting a tunnel or underpass for children crossing East 96th Avenue?
Good evening, council member. Thank you for the question. We have recently received the options for the two locations that the engineer was analyzing to determine the pros and cons and what the best direction forward is. The one location is at the intersection of Landmark and 96th. The other is at Reunion and 96th. It looks like that from the study that I've had a chance to review, that the location, just due to the physical constraints and the geometry and the topography of the land, that probably the best location is going to be at the Landmark intersection. So once we determine what the cost is, we will be able to present that in one of our updates so that we can move forward, but it'll become part of the design for the 96 roadway improvements if it's determined to go ahead and proceed with it.
Because right now it is budgeted at 19 million?
Yes, the current budget for the project is 19 million. So this does not, which does not include the crossing. So we're looking at, I don't have the costs, I can't remember what they were, but I think they were a little over $1 million to add this crossing.
About $1 million?
Yes.
That's not too bad. All right, great. And I think Councilmember Hurst suggested safe passage grants through the state of Colorado.
Yes, there's definitely grant opportunities that we can use.
Yeah.
And
I'm sure they would be sympathetic,
right,
given the fact that it's a truck route.
Right.
Great. Thank you. And then one other thing, which is on the question of grants, that the U.S. was having boot camps on several grant opportunities through the bipartisan infrastructure law, including rebuilding infrastructure with sustainability and equity grant program, climate action planning, digital equity, strengthening mobility, and revolutionizing transportation. And I wondered if we had any staff participating in the boot camps. The National League of Cities is offering the boot camps.
Not to our knowledge. We'll look into that for sure.
All right. Thank you very much, because these are wonderful opportunities with tremendous amount of money at stake. And if Commerce City isn't participating, we're not winning the grants. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Douglas?
Thank you. Thank you. So it was said that in citizens communication, if we would like to address anything that was brought up in citizen communication, that it should be done in administrative business. And so I am doing that now. I would, first of all, like to thank the resident who came forward to remember Matthew Shepard, and to know that happened, because there's so much hate in the world. Love on everybody, please. There's so much need out there, and we shouldn't have lost a wonderful human being to such atrocities that happened. I can't imagine the terror and the horror that poor young man went through just because of who he was and other people's prejudices and their hate. So thank you for coming forward and bringing that up in citizens communication. I would like to thank Joanna Sands for coming forward and all of the work that she did for the people who were losing their mobile homes in Wickiup. I worked tirelessly with her this past week to make sure that those people were able to stay in their homes. And if you go over there and you drive,
Councilmember Douglas, excuse
Yes.
me. I'm just going to remind council members that administrative business items are emergency or unforeseen circumstances. So if you can save that for under your council
Well,
report,
okay.
unless you're making a motion.
All right, well, I'm addressing the people who, it was said that if you wanted to react to the people who spoke in Citizens Communication, that this was the time to do it, and so I am doing it. The other thing I wanted to say that, anyway, thank you to Joanna for all this work that she's doing in our community to help our residents, even though that's unincorporated Adams County, they're still our people. Last but not least, I wanted to address, there was a gentleman who came forward in Citizens Communication. His first name was Keith. I can't remember what his last name was, but I think the letter that he was talking about was that some of the people over in the area, in the Adams Heights area, they have received blight letters. And I believe that's what he was talking about. Some people haven't. And so there's a buzz going on over there. So that was probably what he was talking about. So I just wanted that to go on the record that that's no doubt what he was talking about. I think that probably needs to be addressed because it's really putting some of those people, obviously, he came forward on edge. And then I also wanted to address Joy Bishop for coming forward and sharing her experience of being told that she could not visit her neighbors at Connor Estates anymore. That's really wrong. And I know that they are part of the housing authority. If we have any kind of authority over them at all, something like that should never be happening. That's all I have. Thank you for the time, and I was just following protocol because it was said that if you wanted to address citizens' comments, that you had to wait till administrative business.
Councilmember Kim?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. So I was actually reading over some of the history of Commerce City. And obviously, I do appreciate the book that's actually out there right now with regards to some of the history within Commerce City. But I believe it's probably missing a lot of information in that book. I mean, such as, for example, for the African-American community, the Asian community, our indigenous community that was in the city. And, you know, to also address as far as way forwards, our LGBTQIA plus community as well. Hopefully I got that right. My apologies if I did not. I think what I need to do at this point, I'd like to make a motion to request, to direct the city manager to hire an independent contractor to really look through all of the history of Commerce City, working with our city staff to essentially come up with our own, not necessarily narrative, but more so just to come up with the additional information that is required, or additional information that should be mentioned with regards to our city. Because I think there is some information that is missing out there. And in addition to that, my expectation or my request would also be to ensure that that is what we use moving forward when we provide that narrative or provide that book, whatever the case may be, over to any visitors that come before the city.
Councilmember Kim, if I may, just as a point of order with respect to the motion to direct the city manager to hire particular staff or to engage in a contract that would essentially be in the operations and administration realm. You could move to establish a policy or ask the city manager to potentially bring a study session in to council to discuss historians' work, something to that effect, but moving to ask the manager to hire or to engage in a specific contract, an independent contractor would not necessarily be appropriate with respect to the administration.
Understood. So what you're saying, what you recommend is that we actually run this through a study session for what?
I would recommend, sounds like you're asking for the manager to look into, in general, hiring a historian or looking into engaging someone with that expertise to bring back to council or draft something relating to the history of Commerce City that highlights potentially indigenous communities.
Can I help here?
Sure.
A history that's culturally responsive and trauma sensitive, so that we're able to involve indigenous communities from initial historical accuracies, but then also talk about how certain forms of misdeeds or hate, frankly, create still marginalization to today, because it is that context as well, but it's also how it still impacts Commerce City that I think would be really wise to have to as well.
That works.
What she said. So I'd like to make that motion then. I believe it sounds like through a study session is what it sounds like it would need to come through as, correct?
Not necessarily, but that could be a way to put an action item specifically on the work schedule, something like that.
Okay.
I have a motion. Can you read the motion, Sarah?
I'm going to need some help from Councilmember Chacon, but I believe the motion is to direct the city manager to look into hiring an expert or having someone consult or engage with the city with expertise in history, the like, to incorporate a history of the city that also incorporates all of the issues that Councilmember Chacon mentioned earlier.
I don't even say outreach, education, and culturally responsive and trauma-sensitive history.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a second? Councilmember Chacon. Any discussion? Councilmember Madera.
Yeah, just some clarification. So we're not voting for the appropriation and the hiring of someone, correct? This is for the study
That's
session?
correct. That's what I was trying to advise, avoiding, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other?
And just a follow-up on that, if there is an appropriation needed, I assume the city manager will come with finance in front of you all again.
So at this time, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? So motion passes 8 with 1 absentee. At this time, do any other council members have anything under administration? Is your hand still up, Councilmember Chacon?
It is,
Okay,
actually,
Councilmember
sorry.
Chacon,
I'll be quick. Today I met with a constituent, Councilmember Douglas and I met with a constituent off of East 106th, and she's having serious issues with her sidewalk right there. They don't know if it's an HOA issue, but she has this beautiful oak that's well over 20-plus years old that's already ripped up her side of where the fence is, and it's going underneath. I believe that there was an issue before. She's completely comfortable with being responsible and accountable to the harm that it's caused on her property, but she said she's being held responsible according to the city for now paving the entire sidewalk on that side too, and that's what she's concerned about, that she wants to enter a partnership to where she shouldn't be responsible for how much that root system has grown, but she'll be responsible for what her property is. I can give you her information and loop you into the details. I think she's already dealt with the city before, and she's just confused for why now she's being held responsible for the sidewalk. Her name was Margot, if that's okay. Okay.
Go ahead and forward that information to Jim, and he'll take it from there.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
She
Appreciate
sounds
it.
very desperate, so I just wanted to reiterate.
Yes,
Thank
and copy Annette, if you remember.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I too did want to actually say thank you very much for bringing up Matthew Shepard. Hate is hate, but love truly is love. And if there's any way that when we talk about DIC, it's not just who should be disproportionately impacted communities, but it's legitimately that cultural responsive and trauma sensitive aspects of all of our communities. It's from our ancestors, no matter who you are, to your future generations, and to remember that history isn't just to be about what we do here, but I really appreciate to learn from the past mistakes. It is so pertinent, especially when we're talking about environmental justice. So I really, really appreciate you for being here. And all of those that responded, I believe it was Councilmember Kim who first shot off that email to address WikiUp. So just that immediate response of understanding suffering. I really, really appreciate that we're able to work with the city so quickly to get something done.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to move on to reports. I would like to invite the acting city manager, Ms. Blakeman, to give her weekly report.
Thank you. I'm going to go through a couple of departmental updates here of interest. Crescent Electric Supply has purchased the 170,500 square foot building in the Nexus Business Park, and they're going to be occupying 120,000 square feet for their first Colorado distribution center, and they're going to sublease the remainder of that particular space. And they're looking into moving into that space by January of 2024 and open their doors, hopefully in February or March of 2024. And they're going to be bringing 60 to 65 new jobs to Commerce City and making a $32 million investment in that facility. In community relations, staff estimated that there were about 300 community members that attended the city's first Hispanic Heritage Month celebration this past Saturday afternoon in downtown Derby. It was put together in partnership with Cultivando, the Cultural Council, local Derby businesses, and it was to celebrate our community's rich Hispanic culture. It featured a lot of music venues, dance performances, crafts and kids activities, discounts at local restaurants and shops, and informational booths. And of course, the city would like to thank everybody that was involved in that, all of our partners and volunteers, and of course the attendees for making this a great new cultural event for our community. Next Friday, October 13, the city is proud to partner with Colorado Rapids for Family Fright Night on the field, the soccer fields that are south of Dick's Sporting Goods Park. This first-time event invites the community to enjoy an outdoor showing of the movie Hocus Pocus, and a costume contest, activities and snacks will be available. The doors open at 5:30, and the movie should start at about 6:30. And speaking of October 13, that's my daughter's wedding day, so I will not be there. For Parks and Recreation, we have outstanding new professional at Parks and Recreation State Conference. This is exciting. So Parks Recreation Golf is excited to announce that the Colorado Parks and Recreation Association State Conference, which was held September 26 to 29, our very own Kaylee Whitmore, she's a specialist, a special events coordinator. She received the Outstanding New Professional of the Year award. This recognition is awarded to a young Parks and Recreation professional from Colorado who's demonstrated passionate commitment to the industry and is viewed beyond their organization as an up-and-coming leader. We're very proud to have her as a representative of our department and congratulate her on this very special achievement and prestigious award. On a less happy note, the city's horse sculpture in Pioneer Park, you all remember Cocklebur, was stolen again last week. So the sculpture was last seen intact by staff on September 26th. The police do have a report filed and risk management was notified. Staff is currently evaluating options for replacing the sculpture and implementing a more secure location or measures as it pertains to Cocklebur so that we don't continue to have that poor thing stolen every few years. Pertaining to Fall Fest, join us this Saturday, October 7, from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. at Veteran Memorial Park and Eagle Point Recreation Center for family-friendly activities. This year, the events will include live music from, if you remember, the band's called That 80s Band. They're awesome. Food trucks, arts and crafts, pumpkin patch, trick or treat street, craft and resource booths, inflatables, rock climbing walls, a beer garden, a mariachi performance, and more. And speaking of Halloween, Costumes with a Cop is on September 21st at 8 a.m. at the Civic Center. You can bring your young ones so they can pick out a costume along with a cop who will help them to pick a costume. And if you have a costume to donate, please bring it here to this Civic Center. so that we could make sure to get it distributed. My understanding is that in the past of this event, not that this particular event happened here, but in other communities, those costumes go. So let's see if we can get as many costumes here as possible so that we can get them distributed to our people here. And in Public Works, CDOT started work on the I-27 bridges this past weekend. Work is occurring at night and on weekends, resulting in a lane closure in each direction. Work is planned to be completed by the end of this year. And staff recently completed work on the improved roadway conditions at that railroad that approaches Rosemary Street. Work was performed to improve the rideability over that railroad crossing. And that's the updates that I have from departments.
Thank you, Ms. Blakeman. Do any council members have any questions for the acting city manager? Thank you. So at this time, I'd like to invite the interim city attorney, Ms. Geiger, to give her weekly report.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Just a notice, I've asked the clerk to add on to the agenda in the next, either for the 9th or the 16th, and in appointments for the new council committees that were created by the adjustments, amendments to the council policies in the last meeting, namely the retreat committee and the orientation committee. Specifically with respect to the orientation committee, it would be great if we can get folks appointed to that committee, as we will be working actively on new council and in general council orientation shortly. And just secondly, my staff will be at the CML Attorney Conference in Crested Butte next weekend, so hopefully they will be learning a lot and bringing it back. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Geiger. At this time, do any council members have any questions for the interim city attorney? Councilmember Noble?
Thank you very much, Mrs. Geiger. Did you say that it will be coming to us, these policy changes that we made to the council policy some time ago? I was actually beginning to lose track because I thought we must have voted on these already.
Yes, you all passed those. I believe, was it the last meeting or maybe the meeting before that? But we have not had appointments from you all to fill those two, I think it's two additional committees. And I'm particularly concerned about the orientation committee to ensure we have council members appointed to that committee so we can move along and get the orientation started and developed, essentially.
Yes, that was very key because the experience of council members on their own orientation, we thought would help inform future orientations. So wonderful. So we will do that next meeting?
Either the 9th or the 16th. We just have to check again on the agenda.
Thank you.
Okay. So thank you, Ms. Geiger. Do any council members wish to make a report? Councilmember Noble.
Thank you very much. I participated last Thursday with the Arsenal Group that makes up the supplemental environmental projects, which are part of an enforcement settlement that was involved with the Arsenal when it was closed down for the purposes that it had been intended. That was about a 3-hour meeting. The EPA did a history of the Arsenal, and I think it would be really informative for residents to actually watch the session. It will be on YouTube, and I'll let you know when that will be. What's particularly interesting about it, of course, is that we all know it as as a wonderful refuge for animals and a beautiful place to go. 27 square miles of refuge in Commerce City. But there is a history to the Arsenal that underlies it, and why it's a refuge, and why there is no housing on this property. So It was a very interesting evening. And I was at the great Heritage, Hispanic Heritage Month event in Derby as well. And can I just say to staff that it would be really wonderful to use Derby for these purposes in the future. The band was fabulous. People were dancing in the intersection circles, dancing. Lots of families were there. I was there in the latter part of the day, so I didn't cross paths with any of the other council members, but it was really a very fun experience. And all I could think about was how underutilized the Derby area is. And I hope that we can have Hispanic Heritage Month every month in Derby. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Douglas.
Thank you. I attended another Mayor Mike Johnston's town hall on homelessness, and that was in Montbello. Very interesting. Definitely picked up that we need communication with Denver, and we need to have a seat at the table so that we have a say-so in what happens to Commerce City, because they are right on our border with one of the huge projects that they've got planned. I also attended the Latino Heritage event in Derby, and it was awesome. I want to congratulate Cultivando for doing such a fantastic job. Alondra, who is with our staff, who made it all happen, and I understand that she was the one that brought it forward as an idea to do this event. And I was eating at El Jardín at the end because I had been dancing all afternoon, and I was hungry, so I missed you, Councilmember Noble. Thank you.
Thank you. There's no other council members wishing to make a report. Councilmember Kim.
Just want to say I was at the National Hispanic Heritage event. I got to say, great job overall to staff for setting that event up. Much kudos to you guys all together. We do have a triathlon coming up here in about 2 weeks, so Jenna's going to yell at me for saying volunteer, but so if you have family members who's wishing to volunteer as far as to be out there to help out, support that event on October 15th, please reach out to Jenna, or you can reach out to me directly, and I'll make sure it gets out there, and I'll be sure to invite some of my military brothers and sisters. Right now, we have about 90 to about 95 people signed up for the event overall, so I think it's going to be a huge, fantastic deal. Again, my major purpose for actually setting up this event, it was to essentially to get our small businesses that are in the Derby area or even within Commerce City showcased out there at Adams City High School, right there in the football field area. That's the whole reason why I set up this event, not just to have fun and essentially have fun, for this event, but it's to get them showcased out there because those small businesses do matter to me. Other than that, that's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want everyone to know I also attended the Hispanic cultural event, just along the same lines. It was really neat to see everyone out in the community and involved. And I also would like to thank the resident Scott Van Heusen to continue to show his support in the community and showing up for these meetings and getting involved. I can't stress enough to everyone watching how important it is to get involved in the city and, even serve on a board and commission. So that's all I had for my report, and I need a motion and a second to adjourn the meeting. Councilmember Hurst.
So moved.
Councilmember Madera.
Second.
All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes 8 with 1 absent. Good evening and have a good night. Thanks for watching in and being here.